All right. What is up, Ramon Perez? Thank you so very much for joining us. We're here with the artist, Eisner Award winner. Beautiful book that you did for A Tale of Sand.
Thanks, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. It took us some time to get together, but thank you. We appreciate you. We got a chance to finally meet you at a Lightbox Expo, and you were with the Raid Studios. And for somebody who loves comic books, we didn't even know Raid Studios existed until we actually met you. You introduced us to that world, and we saw, was that 15 years worth of material we put up?
The studio's been around for 20 years, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it's our 20th year this year.
We picked up the all of the Raid anthologies, starting with the 2017 was the Raid one.
Yeah, 2017 was the first one we did. It wasn't the first studio anthology. The studio was started by Chip Zdarsky, Cameron Stewart, Ben Shannon, and Kagan McLeod, who are all like amazing, prolific artists and creators. And they did like a little tiny collection called Rumble Royale, which I might actually have. Oh yeah, I do actually right here on my shelf behind me. Oh, awesome. This was the first one they did.
Oh, those are awesome.
Yeah, and kind of started running it by 2009, and by 2017, I was itching to do an anthology of our own. So, like, you know, we just finally, after years of, you know, skirting the idea of doing a yearly anthology, where I was just like, guys, let's just do it. I don't care what you're going to draw. Just draw something. Because, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, what are we going to call it? What is the theme? I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Can I swear? I was like, yeah, let's draw something exciting, get engaged, and go from there, basically.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, man, just having that conversation with you at Lightbox Expo, to be completely honest, like when you introduced yourself, it didn't click with us.
Oh, yeah?
Who we were in the presence of. We were like, oh, yeah, this is a really cool guy. He loves comics. This guy thinks he knows his stuff. and then we got home. And
I wear a lot of hats. People are always like, are you the same guy? You know, so yeah.
No, man, but you and those guys were just, man, you guys were it was so much fun talking to you guys. I remember like talking with you, and I had to call these two over. I was like, dude, you guys got to come talk to these guys. Like, these guys know their shit. No,
it's a solid crew.
Yeah, they had you guys in a weird spot too, so we wouldn't have expected to find you guys there, like the comic Raid Studios there.
Yeah,
all the animators. So when we were walking by, we saw the animators, and we saw people like asking for jobs all around us, and we're like, oh, we didn't even catch you guys until he went in, and he likes to go to every single one. That's why
I remember that.
Way ahead of him. Yeah. We were way ahead of him, but it's good that he does that, because thank goodness there's three of us, because if it was just the two of us, we would have never even interacted with you. So the Vargas over here, he's
God bless you
guy that and thankfully, because we got those books and they were so well done, and we love anthologies. Anytime we get an anthology, we can't talk enough great things about them, especially when they're done good and with great artists. So
yeah,
that was awesome.
Yeah.
No, same with me. Like I grew up on a ton of different anthologies. You know, Dark Horse Presents was one of my favorite growing up. A bunch of magazines over the years, Heavy Metal. You know, so I find it's a great way to just discover new talent and just see some really awesome work. Because, you know, when an artist has the opportunity to do like a 10-page short story versus, like, say, for example, a monthly book, you know, they'll sometimes pour more love into that 10-pager or 4-page story because they have a little bit more time, or maybe they can experiment a little bit, or whatever it might be, right? So, I'm with you on anthologies. I love doing it. And, you know, Lightbox is such a great show that, you know, we did it in 2019. We didn't know what to expect. We know the guy personally who the two guys behind it, Bobby Chu and Jim Demonakos, who organized it, longtime colleagues and friends, and we wanted to come and support the show, but we had no idea really what it was about. And so in 2019, we really discovered, you know, that it was a concept art, animation driven kind of convention. And so it was funny. The first year when we were there, people thought we were a school, and they kept asking about program. different things, stuff like that. And this year was a lot better because we actually knew what the show was about, so we could go in there and present ourselves a little bit better, which worked in our favor. Lots of great people came by, such as yourselves, discovering our work. And we'll definitely be back again next year, with more books, more people, and more goods.
They're so welcoming. Even when we admitted, we're like, yeah, we've been doing comics forever. But the fact is, when we said, yeah, we never heard of Raid Press. And you guys were so cool about, yeah, no, we've been around for this long. We did this. And we're like, oh, man. So it's, I don't know. I think that's what we have. We're always willing to learn. We always want to listen to people. We love talking with creators. And like I said, when we were speaking with you, we had no idea, it just didn't connect. And thank you for taking the time. You and the guys took the time to actually talk to us and have a great conversation about comics and life and everything. So that's what got us stoked to want to really dive into a lot of your work, man. And Tale of Sand was just, man, I speechless, really.
But thank you so much.
Dude, how was that approach? Like, did they hand you the screenplay? Did you ask for it? Like, how was that? How did this whole thing come about? Like, how did this project get you involved?
So basically the company who put out Tale of Sand was Archaea, which is now owned by Boom. But back then they were their own company, and they had kind of worked up an agreement with the Henson Company, the Henson Studios, to take Henson properties such as like the Dark Crystal, Fraggles, the Labyrinth, and kind of do expanded universe kind of work, new stories, all that kind of stuff. And one of the things they were allowed to do was go through the Henson archives and find cool things that were left undiscovered or kind of buried in the history of the company. And when they came across this screenplay, it was one of the few Jim with his partner Jerry Jewell had written to completion that had never been filmed. And this is like way before Jim's work in the Muppets or anything like that. So this is a lot of his earlier work where he was kind of developing, he was playing with like animation and sound, live action. He was doing a lot of shorts. And so anyway, so they had the script and they just started auditioning people for the screenplay to like kind of adapt it. So myself and I think a dozen other artists were approached. Some who, we were asked to produce like a sample page based on the screenplay. So what they did was they sent us the first few pages of the screenplay to kind of look over, read. And I remember I was recommended by someone to them. I can't remember who offhand. It's been a while, but it was someone I had worked with on something at Marvel or one of the other companies. And so they recommended me. So they sent me the script and said, hey, would you be interested? Here's like the first 10 pages of the screenplay. And I read the first 10. It was just like bizarre. And so I kind of asked, I was like, do you mind sending me more that I can read the full screenplay? Because, this is like a big project. And they were kind enough to do so. So I got a chance to read the entire screenplay. And I chose a couple pages to do my samples of. And basically, both Archaea and the Henson Company had to agree on the artist, basically, the person that was going to adapt this the screenplay, basically. So, and luckily they both agreed on me. So that was my, whatever it was, luck or fate or whatever you want to call it. I was chosen to do the adaptation. And they then asked me if I wanted to work with a writer to adapt the screenplay, and I said, no, thank you, and basically went and adapted it myself, with their blessing, of course. But it was nice that they actually gave me the opportunity to do that and translate this original screenplay into a graphic novel, basically. So yeah, and it was a very quick turnaround. I think it was like under, I want to say 5 months almost, to do the graphic novel from start to finish. So yeah, it was a solid summer that year of a lot of work.
Well, it came out beautifully.
Oh, thanks, man.
How was that feeling though, getting that call? Say, hey, man, you got the job.
It was great. Like, it was funny because it was between that and at that time I was also offered it was a monthly comic in a chef's magazine, which was kind of by a top chef, like a big world-renowned chef. And I was kind of like, what? The chef comic paid better, but the Tale of Sand was far more interesting. So when it actually the news came down the pipe, that I was pretty excited. I had a few colleagues who were like, Henson, no one really cares about Henson anymore. Like, he's not relevant. He passed away like, 10, 20 years, I guess, prior to us tackling the graphic novel. So, but my gut, I often go with my gut. My gut said the book, and, it was weird. It was fun. It was an adventure, but I loved every second of it.
Right on. Yeah. Be honest, man. I feel like you made it relevant again.
Thanks,
after reading that, no, BS aside, after reading that, I kind of dove into some of Jim Henson's other work.
Oh, nice.
The Muppets and stuff like that, and I just found like his fascination with time and things like that.
Yeah.
I even ended up finding a segment that he did where it was the Time in a Bottle, Jim Croce, and it's the Muppets.
Oh, okay.
And I was just like blown away, like, whoa, like this is beautiful. So thank you for that. Thank you for following your gut, man, because that's what that's what we hope to find when we dig through all these books and we find stories like this. So thank you for that.
Oh no, my pleasure, man. And it's super awesome that you led you down that rabbit hole and that journey.
When you're so you finish Tale of Sand, you win your award, you feel good. What do you decide to do after that? How do you pivot? And I imagine you kind of have like the world is your oyster at that point. What do you?
Yeah, it was interesting because prior to Tale of Sand, I was only kind of dabbling in comics, like the mainstream. Like I'd done a couple of one-offs for DC and Marvel. Prior to Tale of Sand, I'd predominantly been working in like RPGs, concept, advertising. I loved comics, but just no one was really giving me a job. So I did a lot of web comics, did my own thing. And, so when this book suddenly won all these awards, it was, suddenly all those people I was trying to get work with that never gave me the time of day were suddenly giving me the time of day and offering me, Marvel offered me X-Men with Jason Aaron. And then I worked on Spider-Man characters and books from Thor, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, X-Men. I did Hawkeye, Nova. And that's like, almost the day. So after Tale of Sand, I had the opportunity to work at Marvel. And over 10 years, I worked on pretty much all their main characters, from Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, Thor, Hawkeye, and several others in one-shots and different places like that. And it was almost 10 years to this year, I think, that I worked at Marvel, and it was a solid run, and I had a great time doing it. But a lot of it's one of those things, I had an opportunity to work with a lot of different creators, Jason Aaron, Jeff Lemire, Chip Zdarsky, who I currently work with on Stillwater for Image, and so many other guys, Hickman, who I worked with on an X-Men annual as well. So it's been a great journey working with all these different creators, and that's one of the things I found most exciting about working with Marvel after my time at after winning the Eisner for Tale of Sand, and kind of opening up that chapter in my career. And now I'm actually eager to take that knowledge base and kind of take it back and dive into doing a lot more of my own stuff, kind of returning to my roots and doing more self-publishing, web comics, and starting things like Raid Press to kind of help other creators out as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any projects you can talk about right now?
Well, right now, I'm basically wrapping up Stillwater. We've been doing that now for about 2.5 years, myself and Chip Zdarsky. The series ends on issue 18, which will be out, I think, either before the end of the year or January. I can't recall. And after that, I got a one-shot lined up with Image. It hasn't been announced yet, so I can't really say too much. But it's I'm doing a solo issue as part of a larger series. And it's all based around jazz and the history of jazz in North America, basically. And it's really, really awesome, well written. Really excited to dive into that. And actually, also a big jazz lover. Coltrane, Miles Davis, all that old stuff. So I'm eager to kind of just dive into this book and do. I think the issue I'm working on is about 48 pages, so it's a nice little bit of work there. And then, to be honest, after that, I'm actually taking next year off from most corporate work. I'll probably be doing some covers here and there for series, but I'm actually working on 2 graphic novels of my own. One's kind of like an all ages Alice in Wonderland called Kookaburra, and the other one I'm developing is kind of for lack of a better description, a reinterpretation of Jimbo. I'm not sure if you've ever seen Kurosawa's film about the Lone Samurai, but I'm doing kind of a black comedy reinterpretation of that. So those are the 2 things on the drawing table for next year, basically.
Right on. It sounds like you're gonna get something a little more serious and something a little lighter.
Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, one's kind of like bubblegum fantasy, and the other one's very dark, and not super dark, but a little bit more emotionally driven, a little bit darker. Definitely a character's journey kind of thing, And it actually leans into a bit of the silent storytelling I did with Tale of Sand, because it's mostly a wordless graphic novel as well. So that'll be interesting to return to that.
We always love to see that when a book doesn't rely so much on a wall of text to convey the point. Like, we like to see people moving and interacting, and comes through in your cartooning so much more than a lot of the modern books. So.
Oh, thanks, man. No, that's much appreciated. Like, I love. I'm probably dating myself here, but when I was younger, I used to collect G.I. Joe, and one of my favorites was like they had a couple of silent issues where it was like Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow going on a secret mission. I think Scarlet was in there too, and just I couldn't get enough of it. It was like a 20-page comic, not one word is spoken, but you get every emotional beat and detail, and the action's awesome. So I really love that aspect of comics, which I think we lose a lot of in today's market, because it's very writer driven these days. So you have a lot of just heavy dialogue and a lot of condensed storytelling to make things fit into an issue. Whereas if you pick up things like Blade of the Immortal or a lot of manga, they'll really stretch things out and really give you all the emotional beats, all the physical movements, the slight twitches, the nuance of the action, which I find you don't really see in a lot of North American comics. So I'm always excited to kind of try to bring that element over whenever I do my work, whenever I have the opportunity to do so.
If you ever, just a recommendation, someone to check out would be Peter Cooper, who does that well. Specifically Sticks and Stones, I believe was the name of that work, where it's wordless, but it's the way he captures emotion, and that is beautiful. He's got other pieces of work too, but Peter Cooper is also one of our we try to go and talk to him every year at Comic-Con, but he does that really well, where he doesn't always just rely on the text or dialogue, and it's just images. So just a recommendation.
I'll definitely look him up.
But that
sounds awesome. I love that kind of stuff. The more I can take it in, the happier I am.
And we actually got through the first trade of Stillwater.
Oh, nice.
So that was, like I said, when you told us, we dove deep into all of this, but and like going back, working with Chip, like, is there other projects you guys had together, or was this the first time you guys actually on an ongoing?
No, I mean, this is the first long form we've done together. The first thing I did with Chip was part of the what was that crossover for Marvel? It was like not Crisis. What's oh man, I'm blanking on it right now. What's the second Cap movie? The
Civil War.
Civil War. I think it was part of the Civil War run. It was basically It's actually one of the comics in my career where I've gotten the most media coverage in my entire career, because I did Trudeau, which is the Canadian Prime Minister, on the cover, where he boxes Tony Stark in the comic, and it's only a 12-page story. But I had BBC calling me, I had CNN calling me. I was like, what the fuck is going on here? It was like crazy. Yeah, it was just just having drawn the Prime Minister basically of Canada on a comic. So that was Chip and I first collaborating on that one shot, and like I said, it was like a 12-page story, I believe. And then the next time we worked together was when I came in to finish off the run of I think it was called Thing 2 in 1. It was basically the Thing and Human Torch, right before they relaunched the Fantastic Four series at Marvel. So I did I think it was like 4 or 5 issues of that series as well. So that was the first time we worked together on a monthly, and Stillwater is our longest run together, basically.
And so he approaches you, you guys have known each other for such a long time. You guys go way back. Do you feel like, well, this is my homie, so, I feel like there's an obligation. I got to say yes, to help him out with this project. Or do you feel like you have to still connect with the story or feel something for what he's giving you and then collaborate with him? Or like with
for sure. Yeah. If I didn't have an affinity for the project, I wouldn't take it on. You work on a lot, especially when you're dedicating your time to an ongoing series, a monthly series at that. So it's a lot of work to do every month. When Chip, it was actually Skybound who approached me, probably on Chip's behalf, or behest. But once they approached me, Chip and I went out for drinks and kind of caught up and, chatted about the story. It was his idea. He'd already written, I think, the first 5 issues by the time I was asked to come on board. So I really didn't have a lot of involvement in the story, which, on a series like that, it might have been more interesting if I could have gotten involved. But they'd already developed it quite a bit with Skybound. So when I came in, I was pretty much just realizing the visual world and the characters of the series. Chip gave me design ideas or concepts for what he liked for the characters, and other characters were just left completely up to me as well. But yeah, no, definitely would want to. I wouldn't work on something just because it's a friend. That is a nice gesture to do, but at the same time, you're going to be doing a lot of hours, or you're going to be putting in a lot of hours, working on this stuff. So you better like what you're doing. You know what I mean?
How is it approaching like a Spider-Man character? Are you kind of given a little bit more free reign as to like the design elements of the book, or is it pretty?
It depends on. I think it depends. Like Marvel's pretty good with that. They'll give you like a little bit of freedom when you kind of draw the stuff, as long as it's on model. I remember when I worked on Wolverine and the X-Men. I took a little bit of liberties with Wolverine's costume, just to my interpretation of it kind of idea. Spider-Man, I was pretty much on model. The one comment I got from a lot of people was they liked that I drew my eyes smaller than most people did on when working on Spider-Man, and that was just me more so because I was asked because the series I was working on took place during the Ditko era, like the earlier Spider-Man stuff, and Dan Slott, who was writing it, we really wanted to capture that era of comics, so I kind of leaned into Ditko's approach on Spider-Man, which was the original smaller eyes, not the big flamboyant bug-like McFarlane eyes, so. And that's the kind of stuff I grew up on as well. Like when I watched, Spider-Man on, TV or something as a kid or on the cartoon, he always had the classic small eyes. So that's kind of my version of him anyways. If I were to do another Spidey series now, I might take a different approach. But yeah, Marvel's actually pretty good with that overall. They'll let you play as long as you're pretty much on model and you're not going to screw up the character. People aren't going to recognize who they are, basically, and like when I worked on Nova, I was co-writing Nova Jeff Loveness, and we were relaunching the series and bringing back the original Nova as well. And I got to redesign both their costumes because it was kind of a number one. And that was actually quite great, actually, as well. Like, the editor pretty much gave me free reign to do what I wanted with the costume and, change it up as I needed to, basically. So it was a lot of fun to do that. Yeah, it's been great fun to work on all those characters over the years, actually.
Speaking of Ditko and Mark McFarlane, who are some of your inspirations of artists that you grew up that you're like made you want to become an artist? In comics, like, I grew up, I was a late bloomer when it came to comics, but the era I came in, like, the big names that really kind of lured me into comics, or the idea of just like how to approach the art and the storytelling, were guys like Mignola, Arthur Adams. I'm trying to think who else here. Those are like the two big two. Jose Garcia Lopez. What else? We got Alan Davis was another one. So many of that. I grew up on a lot of Chris Bacallo early years, when he was working on Shade the Changing Man. I grew up in a lot of there was a lot of bad art when I was first collecting comics, but like the guys I mentioned stuck out because they were so much higher above the rest of the caliber of artists. And then, like, when McFarlane came on the scene, like, I ate his work up. Like, I loved it. Like, it was so different. Looking back on it now, like, he doesn't quite have the anatomy down like, Arthur Adams did, or Jose Garcia Lopez, who was just impeccable with his artwork and inking. But what he brought to the table was like the flash and the pizzazz, the different like panel layouts, and really going against the norm. So like he kind of brought a different element which grabbed me as a kid, and probably stays with me to this day, with the way just approaching things a little bit differently from a graphic design standpoint, from laying out panels to breaking borders and that sort of thing. But I think the great thing about working in comics or just being immersed in art is like I'm always being inspired by new people coming on board, whether it's someone like James Herron or Daniel Warren Johnson, or Becky Cloonan, like such a variety of creators out there. And I'm always digging down into the past. Like, I love old school art like Alex Toth, and all kinds of things like Milton Caniff. So I think the journey's never ending. Like, I keep playing, I keep discovering new things. I keep trying to get better, basically. So it's great. It's a great career to have.
Is there any artist that you see right now that isn't, up at that level yet, but you're like, man, this guy's got it. He's gonna, or they.
I'll be honest. I don't collect as much as I do as I used to. So like when I buy stuff these days, I tend to buy artists who I know or who I recognize. So I can't say who's new on the scene or who is like a bit too fresh. There's a couple of guys. I'm blanking on their names right now, who have done covers for their series and stuff like that. Boom has a great array of awesome talent over at it, and I'm seeing a lot of great stuff coming out of there. Great cartooning, great character designs and body language. But I'm being a bit of an asshole because I can't remember their names. But I have to see there's a great landscape over at Boom because of the wide variety of their series that they do. That's just a lot of great talents coming up through there, and it's always cool to see where and how they evolve and where they go, whether they go to Image or a Marvel or a DC or somewhere else for that matter.
I think we've been picking up a lot more Boom books.
There is.
There's just so many.
There's such a great variety of it. Like, I love Marvel, DC, but one of the things I loved when I was in college was Vertigo, because it would just push the envelope, and you don't really have that at the big two anymore. A lot of the stuff that would normally happen at a Vertigo now is happening at Boom or Image for that matter, right? So, and Dark Horse is kind of trying to make its way back as well. So it's just cool to see the variety of stuff we have available.
you've done 2 books from screenplays, right? You did the Jane Eyre adaptation. Was that from a screenplay and then you adapted it?
So Jane Eyre, basically, or Jane as the book was called, came about with Aline Brosh McKenna, who was a screenwriter of Devil Wears Prada and the showrunner of a TV series called Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Very prolific screenwriter, and she kind of fell in love with comics and graphic novels after a few people kind of loaned her some copies, and she kind of just discovered the medium, basically. And we had a mutual friend, Stephen Christie, who was my primary editor on Tale of Sand, and basically the Jim Henson lot was on the same lot where Aline had her office, so he kind of got to know her because he was a big Henson fan, and he would just go to the office, wander around, meet all the other people there. So they became good friends. So when she had the idea of kind of trying to do a graphic novel based on Jane Eyre, which is one of her favorite classic novels, she expressed that to Stephen, and after like trying to find an artist that she could collaborate with, he asked me if I would be interested. And I'm always interested in kind of going against the norm. You know, I love superhero comics, but like they're never like my first choice to do. I love sci-fi, I love horror, I love westerns, I love more genre-driven stuff. So the chance to do a romance graphic novel really kind of definitely kind of piqued my curiosity, basically. And Aline and I had a very a love of the classic 1940s, 1950s illustrators from magazine work. So that kind of cemented the fact, because that's kind of look she wanted, or at least kind of like an homage to that look. So being able to do that graphic novel and kind of play stylistically, do something very different than what I would do working on, say, X-Men for that, you know, was great. And because Aline wasn't familiar with how to write for a graphic novel, what I said was, I basically said, listen, you do what you do best, and you write your screenplay how you would do this for a film, basically, and then just hand it off to me, and I will then adapt it to a graphic novel. So basically that's what she did. She basically wrote a screenplay. It took a few years back and forth as she was developing it. You know, the direction changed here and there over the years. But once I had the final screenplay in my hand, I basically did a full pass, adapting it, figuring out where the page turns are, the panel breakdowns, the moments, and then once we were actually going into development at that stage, my editor at that time, Sierra Hahn at Boom, a fabulous editor, she came in and was really sunk her teeth into the project, because the project up until that point was kind of lost. It had been given a few too many editors, but she came on board and really took hold of the project and really guided it to the conclusion, to the final book. I would fly out to LA, have meetings with her. We discussed the ending. I storyboarded the ending off of some new ideas, and then we ran it by Aline, who loved it, and then she elevated the ending by adding a bit more context. So it was a really great writer's room, or a creative room kind of project, where all hands were on deck creating that book. And I'm really proud of that book. It's being translated around the world, and a lot of people come over and who have discovered it and truly love it for what it is. So yeah, lots of fun to do that stuff. I love adapting screenplays because it gives me way more free reign than working with a writer who writes for comics and gives me a full breakdown, basically. Some of the guys I've worked with over the years, like Sam Humphries, Dan Slott, Jonathan Hickman, have given me Marvel-style scripts where basically it's like a paragraph or two where they basically describe the whole issue, what they want to happen, and then basically I break it down the whole way and create the final product, visual product, which I have way more fun doing than working on. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can work on a regular script, but it's way more fun when you have the freedom to kind of figure out where the page cuts are, where the double page splashes can be, you know, how you can arrange the panels and that sort of thing. So it's been a joy to work on those kind of projects.
Was Butternut Squash your first comic?
Butternut Squash was my first web comic. Basically, that came about while I was working in when I first started my freelance career. I was working in RPGs, role-playing games, basically doing a lot of illustrative work. I had done comics for myself growing up as a kid, but what I grew up on before I discovered, you know, superhero comics and North American comics, I grew up on newspaper comics. That was my favorite thing. So, you know, Garfield, Calvin and Hobbes, Hagar the Horrible, Mother Goose and Grimm, all that kind of stuff was my bread and butter. So I wrote a lot of that stuff growing up. And basically in high school, I had a comic where I anthropomorphized a lot of my friends into animal characters. And I had this like comic where I would make fun of my friends, And so then when I was working in the RBG industry years later, after graduating from college and, you know, kind of embarking on a full-time career, working in gaming and working in children's books and advertising, I kind of wanted an outlet to do a comic. And I'd been approached by a local newspaper to do a comic in the newspaper. So I resurrected the idea of making fun of my friends. Basically, this was my new set of friends. I just moved to a new city, so I decided to make create stories around our misadventures, where we lived and who we engaged with and whatever. And the deal with the newspaper fell through, but at the time, webcomics were kind of growing, and you had things like PvP Online, Penny Arcade. So I was like, you know what, let's try taking it to the web, basically. And so that was my first kind of, I guess, public-facing comic I did. And it was fun because we had like over 140,000 readers a month all around the world. From, you know, we had a big fan base like Poland, Australia, Germany, the US obviously as well. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's actually funny, next year is the 20th anniversary of that comic, and I can't believe it's been that long, but it was a fun ride. And actually, it's funny that you mentioned Butternut Squash, because when I first got the job for Tale of Sand, I asked the editor, I was like, what kind of look are you looking for? Because I draw different, like, you know, I work in role-playing games doing dark fantasy, which was like, you know, very, you know, like cyberpunk, dark, robots, all kinds of tech. But at the same time, I was doing a webcomic and children's books, which are very cartoony and way different. So when I asked the editor, I was like, hey, what's the look you want? You know, they basically sent me JPEGs that they found on Google of my work, which included my Butternut Squash stuff, which I found hilarious. But yeah, it's funny that stuff goes around, like, and the comic was hilarious because it was one of we called it the dirtiest, the squeaky clean, or the cleanest, dirtiest comic ever, because we touched up on like everything from, you know, sex, dildos, drugs, you know, all that stuff. And but we kind of had this like nice polished demeanor, and that comic also got me work doing children's books. So you never know what's gonna get you where in this world. So it was a lot of fun to do that comic. I wish I had gone further with it, but as my career was taking off, the comic began to suffer online, and unfortunately, we never managed to keep a regular schedule to do all the stories we wanted to do. So, but who knows? Maybe something next year for the 20th anniversary. Dust it off for a little bit of humor and fun, basically.
All right, cool. Because I was gonna ask you, if it's ever coming to print. Is it on print?
We did a one issue back in the early 2000s with a small publishing company, and we actually had great orders back. This is back before Image really took off and became the like mega company it is today. So we had like solid orders, but unfortunately the company we were with folded due to over expansion. And so unfortunately we never got to, even though we got great reviews and all that stuff, we never managed to continue it on. But like I said, next year's the 20th anniversary, so maybe it's time to bring it all in one book, because we have over almost 200 strips, all kinds of extras we've done over the years. So it would make a fun retrospective on that book, and just to kind of have a bit of a collected tome, basically, for sure.
I definitely like to pick it up if it did.
That's free sales right here.
For you guys right here.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah, we'll push it to everybody else. But hey, if you guys,
I love it.
I know that when we were talking about Raid Press, you're the CEO. What responsibilities are involved with that now? Like, you're in charge, like, ever since everybody left. Like, what is your role now with Raid, and what is it that you do? And
I mean, like I said, I took over Raid and running Raid. I mean, Raid for the most part pretty much runs itself. We just have to make sure we can keep a roof over our head, make sure there's the bills are paid and all that stuff. We've grown. Like, the original studio started in 2002, I believe it was, and basically with 4 people, and it's grown to, I think now we're over 25 members in the studio. So it's a little bit more work to run it, but it runs fairly smoothly overall. With Raid Press, we started that in 2017 with only one book, but over the pandemic, we kind of accelerated things and grew to publishing multiple books. We have 4 volumes of an anthology, working on the 5th right now. We've got Forspoke, which is a collection of online humor strips. We've got a novel, a fantasy novel. We've got like 6 more books slated for next spring. So it's definitely taken on a lot more responsibility on my end. And luckily there's a great crew at Raid these days helping out and making sure things get done. But right now, as we grow as a company, I guess that responsibility has to be kind of, I guess, the greatest part in taking something from nothing to building it up and getting it out and aware, so people know what it is, they can discover it. So we've been going slowly, step by step. We've been using Kickstarter as a major platform to kind of get our stuff out there, but next year we're looking into getting into distribution into comic shops around the world. So we're slowly growing. We're trying to do good stuff, and just make sure the books by the great talented people we have get seen and get out there. Right now I think we have a goal of doing about 8 to 10 books a year over the next several years, and that's a very full plate for what essentially is 5 people running around trying to make shit happen. So I guess right now it's just the biggest responsibility is just making sure things get done on time so we can get them to the printer, get them done right. I go in and design the books as well, so I'm like, I have an education as a designer. That's what I went to school for, and and it's a joy to go in there and create these books and make them look as beautiful as possible with the budgets we have. So it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun, and I'm very excited about next year and the years to come when we have all these books coming out, and I'm hoping more and more people discover our books and the creators we have in our stable, and the ones that are going to come as well, because they're all super talented and they're putting out amazing work, basically.
Definitely, and the work speaks for itself, man. Those books are beautiful.
Oh, glad to hear that, man. Super glad to hear that. Yeah, we're trying to, especially the anthologies, we're really trying to kind of grow them as let's try to get international people. Because the first one started as just like us showing off as a studio, but as people's careers take off, there's not as much time on your hands, so we slowly started reaching out to people outside of the studio with every volume, and which I think worked out great, because now you're seeing new and interesting voices coming in and lending their talents and doing stories they want to do, right? So I'm really looking forward to kind of showcasing what is possible and what we can get out there from, like, you know, the latest volume. We had artists from like all over the States, Canada, and Europe. We had our first European artists come in, so I'm looking forward to having more of that wherever we can snag them and get them creating something awesome, basically.
And what's the website where people can pick it up at?
Right now it's raidpress.com, and we can get all our books there. And raid.world is our main studio site, but we'll be revamping that in the next probably 6 months or so to kind of better reflect what we're doing these days. But yeah, that's we ship all over the world, and we just want to get our books to as many people's hands as possible, basically.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Stories, and like we said earlier, we love it.
It's funny too that you said you had a background in design, because I was looking at it, I'm like, what did he do? He had to work in design before this, right? It's too good.
I just love that. I love that kind of stuff, right? Like, and you know, I think comics is, you know, as I said with Todd McFarlane, you know, Todd McFarlane, you know, did graphic design for a while. You can really see it in his work how he played with panels and did different things, and it's a muscle I love to kind of to play with, like, you know, how your imagery gets out there, how the book is packaged, the kind of paper you print on, like every little nuance. Like, my OCD goes nuts, and I have fun with it, basically.
I think we're
about wrapping up. Yeah. Thank you so much for your
Oh no, my pleasure, man. My pleasure. Sorry it took a couple of rounds to try to get this organized, but
just no worries. Like, we're glad we were able to connect with you and have this.
Nice.
We'll definitely have links below for Raid Press, and
yeah, that's awesome.
And again, Tale of Sand was fantastic. That was beautiful.
Thanks, man. Thank you.
Learning to crawl, for those that, you know, if anybody was wondering about what I was learning to crawl, Dan Slaughter.
Yeah, the Spider-Man one. Yeah, that's a favorite of mine. Yeah, that was a great series to work on. You know,
I like it too. So yeah, dude, thank you so very much for your time.
My pleasure, man.
Appreciate it. And as soon as we drop this video and we have it up, we'll definitely
tag you in it. We'll
and all that.
Yeah, let me know and I'll spread the word as well. So yeah, that's all. I look forward to seeing it, man.
Thank you man. So very much for your time.
Awesome.
We're excited to see what else you come out with, man. Really.
You posted.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Have a good night, man. Thank you.
Good night.
You too, man. I'll talk to you later.